The clearing. I had no idea that a camping vacation with my family would turn into the scariest night of my life. It was intended to be a straightforward escape, an opportunity to disconnect and create memories with my loved ones. Rather, it became a nightmare that haunts me and keeps coming back to me whenever I close my eyes. My spouse, Carl, 77, and I, Jane, 63, were camping. Our 40-year-old daughter Hannah, her 6-year-old son Cade, and her 46-year-old partner Thomas, his 2 kids Nathan, 23, and Austin, 21. We had selected a remote location about 100 miles southeast of Dallas, close to Tennessee Colony, Texas. The landscape was breathtaking, with broad fields scattered with wildflowers, acres of towering pine trees, and a tiny pond that glistened in the sunlight. It seemed like the ideal location to get away from the daily grind. On Friday night, we arrived with our RV, a dilapidated vehicle we had borrowed from Carl's brother, and pitched a few tents for the lads. It was an easy strategy: roast marshmallows, go fishing, go hiking, and simply spend time together. Saturday morning fulfilled all of my expectations. We went to the pond after having bacon and scrambled eggs for breakfast over the campfire. Cade's face glowed with pride as he caught a small fish and squealed with excitement. "Observe, Grandma." He held it out and exclaimed, "I'm a fisherman." As Thomas showed Nathan and Austin how to cast their lines, Carl laughed and assisted him in unhooking it. Sitting on a blanket, Hannah and I watched the scene while drinking coffee. "This is what it's all about," she remarked, resting her head on my shoulder. With a full heart, I nodded. By midday, the aroma of dirt and pine filled the air as we hiked a track that meandered through the forest. Cade gathered pine cones and packed them in his knapsack until it protruded, playfully shoving and laughing. Nathan and Austin sprinted to a clearing. When we returned to the campsite, exhausted but joyful, Thomas started the grill for burgers. We gathered around the fire pit as the sun began to set, the sound of wood burning blending with our conversation. Cade was curled up in Hannah's. Carl narrated a ridiculous tale about a bear that had stolen his fishing pole years ago, while he had marshmallow goo on his face. As the children giggled, I experienced a profound sense of satisfaction. At that point, things began to change. Our RV had become trapped in an area of mud close to the camping entrance earlier that day. Despite our combined efforts, it wouldn't move. As Thomas was muttering obscenities, a man from the nearby property approached on an orange tractor. He said, "Looks like you folks could use some help," in a kind and laid-back tone. We felt relieved. Thomas wiped muck from his hands and remarked, "You're not wrong." The man identified himself as Bill, a local who resided on the adjacent property. He was stocky, in his early 30s, and had a faded baseball cap and a scruffy beard. He quickly freed the RV by hooking a chain to his tractor. Carl exclaimed, "Wow, thank you," and shook Bill's hand. That was above and beyond. Bill smiled and waved it away. "No difficulties at all. It is important for neighbors to watch out for one another." When he smiled, his eyes wrinkled and he appeared sincere. "You folks here for the weekend?" Hannah answered, "Yeah, just camping with family," as she bounced Kate on her knee. "It's our first time out here." "Well, you picked a good spot," Bill said. "This land's got a lot of history." I couldn't identify the flicker in his expression, but it went by fast. He was offered a seat by the fire by Carl, who was always the host. "Stay for a beer?" Bill nodded after a moment of hesitation. "If I do, don't mind." He reached for a folding his chair. He joined us and opened the beer can that Thomas had given him. At first, the conversation went smoothly. Bill informed us about his upbringing in the region and how his family had been landowners for many generations. He was familiar with every fishing hole and trail. He leaned over and said, "You ever stargazy out here? There is a clearing at approximately 4 mile into the forest. Stars appear to be in close proximity to one another." Nathan exclaimed, "That sounds awesome," as his eyes brightened. Always eager for an adventure, Austin nodded. Cade also became alert. He said, "Can we go, Mommy?" "Hannah, it's getting late, buddy," she remarked, tousling his hair. Thomas, however, shrugged. Why not? Bill, it's not that far. No, it's a quick walk, Bill remarked casually. I am able to guide you. I was a little uncomfortable. Are you certain it's secure? I asked, glancing at Cade's small frame. Bill fixed me with a firm smile. As safe as possible. I frequently stroll through those forests. I ignored it because everyone else appeared excited, even if there was something too smooth about his voice. Cade, Austin, Nathan, and Thomas made the decision to accompany Bill to the clearing. We won't be long, Thomas assured Hannah as he planted a kiss on her cheek. I yelled after them, be careful, as they grabbed flashlights and made their way into the trees. Leading the way, Bill's shadow vanished into the shadows. A knot started to build in my stomach as I watched until I could no longer see them. I stayed by the fire with Carl and Hannah. Hannah made fun of Carl while he was telling her about his previous camping excursions, his awful sense of direction. I attempted to participate, but my thoughts kept returning to the forest. I made the decision to relax as the fire was going out and I was worn out from the day. I stood up and said, I'm going to the RV. You too. Don't stay up too late. Hannah grinned and replied, Night, Mom. Carl winked at me. I got into the RV, got into my pajamas, and lay down on the small bed. I was calmed by the sound of crickets outside. I must have slept off, because the next thing I know, the silence was broken by gunfire. Sharp and unrelenting, they emerged one by one from the woods. I ran away, standing up, my heart thumping my chest. What was that? I fumbled for my glasses and mumbled. One shot went off, followed by another. I staggered out of the RV, my hands trembling as I put on my shoes. Carl and Hannah were standing already, gazing up at the trees. The long shadows were formed by the embers of the fire. Those were gunshots, Carl replied in a strained, low voice. Maybe hunters. Hunters don't shoot like that at night, Hannah remarked, looking pale. She gripped her phone tightly, but there was no signal. Thomas, where are you? Where's Cade? There was a heavy hush that pressed against my chest as the gun ended. We stood motionless, listening for any sound. Voices, footsteps, anything. Every minute that passed made the knot in my stomach tighten. Then I noticed activity along the campsite's edge. Bill was the only one making his way back. Where's my son? Hannah stepped forward and demanded. Where's Thomas? Nathan Austin. Bill remained silent. His eyes were vacant and his face was expressionless, as if the warmth from before had vanished. He continued to approach us slowly and deliberately. I noticed it at that point, a gun sparkling in his right hand, capturing the embers dim glow. Bill, what's going on? Carl asked in a calm but terrified tone. He moved to protect Hannah by stepping in front of her. Bill paused a few feet away, looking back and forth between us. You shouldn't be here, he replied in a flat tone. This land ain't yours. He lifted the gun and fired before I could comprehend what he had spoken. Carl collapsed to the ground with a painful thud after the gun struck him in the chest. The sound of Hannah's scream was raw and sharp, cutting right through me. Carl's shirt was covered in dark, shimmering blood. I was immobile. My thoughts were shouting, but I felt as though I was witnessing it happen to someone else. With sobs strangling the air, Hannah turned and sprinted for the RV. Bill didn't think twice. With a splintering crack, he kicked in the RV door as he strode after her. She screamed once again, and then I heard two more gunshots. There was a heavy, oppressive silence. Gravel dug into my flesh, my legs gave out, and I fell to my knees behind the fire pit. Bill's voice crept into the shadows. I know you're still out there, he said in a mocking, low voice. You can't hide forever. Panic tore at me. Now I had to hide. My gaze flitted, traversing the campsite and coming to rest on a stack of folded camp chairs, leaning against a tree that was partially covered by a tarp. With my palms scraping the ground, I slid over to it and squeezed behind the seats, covering myself with the tarp. My breath was ragged and shallow as I rolled into a ball. I hardly noticed, but my nose was full with the smell of canvas and wet ground. All I could think about was, stay put, keep quiet. Bill's boots crunched nearer. His steps were deliberate and slow as he searched. I heard the fabric tearing as he tore open the tents. I was unable to understand what he was saying as he murmured to himself in a low, irate voice. At one time, he came to a stop by the chairs. His boots were inches from my face, visible through a hole in the tarp. I was certain he would hear the pounding in my heart. I covered my lips with my palm to stop myself from whimpering. After standing there for what seemed like an eternity, he went on. I heard him kick over a cooler, look beneath the RV, the cracking of the plastic. His voice was unnaturally calm as he repeated, "Come on out." I don't have all night. I stayed put. I was unable to. I winced at every leaf rustle and twig snap. Had he disappeared? Was he observing, waiting for me to make a mistake? Staying curled up made my body hurt, but I was paralyzed by fear. My head was filled with images. Hannah's cry, Cad's small face, Carl's dead body. Tears trickled down my cheeks as I closed my eyes tightly. Each hour seemed to last forever. My hands were numb and my legs were cramping, but I dared not move. Sounds filled the night. The occasional creak of trees, distant owls, and crickets. Every one of them seemed like a trap, like if Bill were circling about. I kept repeating what he had said. "You don't go in this land." What was meant by that? What made him act in this way? I ventured outside as the sky started to lighten, a subtle grey seeping through the trees. The fire pit was ashy and frigid, and the encampment was motionless. The RV door swayed slightly as it hung open. I listened for Bill's footsteps, but I didn't hear anything. My body begged to be hidden, but I had to find out whether anyone was alive. With my joints complaining, I slid out and moved stealthily in the direction of the RV. As I ascended the stairs, my heart thumped. Carl and Hannah were gone when I went inside. I turned away, gagging as blood tugged beneath them. I couldn't force myself to look for Austin, Nathan, Thomas, or Cade. I knew in my heart that they were dead. I picked up my phone from the RV table with trembling hands. I had 1 bar of signal. By some miracle, my voice was hardly audible as I contacted 911. "There's been a shooting," I choked out. "Everyone in my family has passed away. Please move quickly." With a composed yet anxious tone, the operator kept me on the line. "Remain where you are, ma'am. Assistance is on its way." I dropped to the ground outside the RV, staring at the trees while holding on to the phone. What if Bill returned? It felt like hours until the police arrived, but it was really less than 20 minutes. Their sirens grew louder as they wailed, until the campground was encircled, while a paramedic wrapped me in a blanket and escorted me to an ambulance. Officers surrounded the scene with their rifles drawn. I told them everything: Bill, the gun, the tractor, and the excursion to see the stars. He was still carrying the firearm when they discovered him at his mother's house nearby. He didn't fight the arrest. I found out the whole thing later. The fact that Thomas had purchased the farm his family had owned for many years had infuriated Bill. Seeing us there, laughing, camping, and creating memories, made him realize that he had lost it years prior. One by one, he had shot Thomas, Nathan, Austin, and Cade after luring them into the woods. He would then return to retrieve Carl, Hannah as well. Because I had concealed myself behind those chairs, I was the only one who had managed to get away. I'm consumed by guilt. How come I didn't prevent them from accompanying Bill? Why didn't I follow my instincts? Every night, I see their faces, Cad's brilliant eyes, Hannah's chuckle, and Carl's gentle grin. But the only thing that keeps me calm is the knowledge that Bill is imprisoned and will never harm anyone else. Every detail of that night, along with that, was engraved in my soul, a reminder of how near death I was in those woods. The rest stop man, after spending hours driving my RV worn-out but comfortable vehicle I called wanderlust across Texas's interminable highways. I was exhausted and had burning eyes. I had been traveling 4 months in search of freedom, yet all I wanted that night was to sleep. I came to a brief rest halt, the kind you would miss if you blinked off the freeway. There was only a flickering street lamp illuminating a cracked parking lot, and it was deserted. The adjoining restroom building was a complete wreck. Its walls were made of cinder blocks covered in graffiti. One window was blocked up, another broke. Soda cans and their wrappers filled a rusted garbage can. No other vehicles, no other individuals. I was too tired to care that it felt strange. I crawled into my bunk at the back of the RV, locking the doors and double-checking the deadbolt. The mattress's comforting stream is lulling me into a sound sleep. I was startled awake by a loud thud. My heart pounded strongly and quickly against my ribs, like if I had been startled. Holding my breath and straining to hear, I froze. There was another, louder thump, like someone hitting the aluminum side of the RV with a fist. With its crimson numerals piercing the darkness, the digital clock on the counter blazed 21:17 a.m. My mouth became parched. With my bare feet feeling chilly on the vinyl floor, I slipped out of bed and moved stealthily in the direction of the tiny window above the sink. I clutched the curtain's edge and peeled it back just enough to get a glimpse outside, my hands trembling. There was a man standing outside, looking directly at me. His gaze was they caught the sickly yellow glow of the street lamp and were wide and wild, as if they didn't belong in a human face. A slow, menacing smile spread across his lips, revealing crooked, discolored teeth. A rush of nausea gripped me as my stomach churned. He pounded on the window with his fist. Once more, methodically, each blow resonating in the silence. Thud, thud, thud. My heart raced so quickly that it hurt, and I flinched when the glass rattled in its frame. He said, "Hey, friend," in a low, nearly sing-song voice that was muffled through the glass, but still audible enough to make my skin crawl. "Come on out. Wherever you are, come out." My hip hit the counter as I staggered back. I was in excruciating pain, but I hardly felt it. "Look, I don't want any trouble," I yelled, hardly able to keep my voice together. "Just leave me alone, okay?" His chuckle was a harsh, piercing sound that chilled my blood. "Problems, yes. There will be problems, but not for me." He cocked his head as if he were studying me, his smile never going away. His boots were covered in muck. His jeans were smeared with dirt, and his jacket was tattered. He appeared to have been living on the streets for years. Then I heard it, a sound that sounds like liquid splattering on the floor, and I smelled something strong and nasty, unmistakable fuel. My heart fell to my stomach. I hurried to the opposite side of the RV and pulled open the dinette's curtain. He stood there, filling the base of a metal gas can with the liquid glinted as it tugged at the tarmac, evoking wanderlust. He moved deliberately and gently, as if he were enjoying it. I gasped for air. I smudged the window with my sweaty palms as I rubbed my hands against it. He raised his head, met my gaze, and smiled. Expanded. He took out a matchbook from his pocket and displayed it like a trophy. "You smell that?" he asked in a mocking, harsher voice. "That's your home going bye-bye." "Please don't," I screamed and pounded on the window till it trembled. "What are your desires? I'll offer you anything. Food, cash, anything." I didn't care if my voice sounded pleading and needy. I simply desired his removal. The small flame flared brightly in the darkness as he struck a match. He fixed his unblinking gaze on me and murmured, "I want to watch it burn. Are you going to cook in there like a rat, or are you going to leave now?" Panic tore at my chest, my thoughts whirling. I whirled around, looking around the smaller V. I had my phone on the counter, but there was no signal. I was in locations like this all the time. With shaking hands, I reached beneath the sink for the fire extinguisher. Very awful, I nearly dropped it as I fumbled with the handle. My only escape route was through the door of the RV, but he was there, circling like a wolf. Another match struck, and I heard a faint whoosh as the flames ignited. Thick, black smoke curled up outside and seeped through the edges of the door. The crackle of flames intensified, and my nose was struck by the smell of burning rubber. With my heart pounding in my ears, I knelt at the entrance. I yelled, attempting to maintain my composure. "You don't have to do this. Just go with what you want." He remained silent. Rather, as he approached the door, I heard his boots crunching on the gravel. He seemed to be attempting to rip it open as the handle jiggled and then shook violently. I held on to the extinguisher, my knuckles white, tighter. My throat burned and my eyes watered as the smoke grew stronger. It was only a matter of seconds before the fire spread. With my lungs burning, I inhaled deeply and made a decision. I kicked the door after unlocking it, opened and pointed the extinguisher. He was there, his fist up and his face contorted in anger. A burst of white froth struck him in the face as soon as I fired the trigger. He stumbled back, tripping over the gas, and let out a hoarse, angry scream while scratching at his eyes can as I ran past him. The heat scorched my flesh and the flames rose higher, licking the side of the RV. Sharp rocks sliced into my soreness as my bare feet struck the gravel. However, I continued. With my arms swinging and a cry for assistance, I ran toward the roadway. The crackle of the fire behind me was barely audible over my voice. The fires illuminated the night with an orange glow as the rest stop vanished into the darkness. I continued running till I noticed headlights in the distance, my legs burning and my chest heaving. The tires of a pickup truck crunched on the shoulder as it slowed. A woman, perhaps in her 50s, peeked out the driver's window, her eyes wide with concern and her face pallid. She yelled, "Get in," and flung open the passenger door. I hurried inside and fell onto the seat, trembling all throughout. "There's a man," I stammered out as I gasped. "He attempted to set my RV on fire. He's still present. Are you okay?" She asked in a strained voice, looking first at me and then back at the road. "Do you need me to take you to the police?" "Yes, please," I murmured in a barely audible whisper. I looked back as I turned in the seat. Wanderlust was being consumed by flames, and the RV's frame was burning red in the darkness. The figure had vanished, blending into the darkness as if he had never existed. "I saw the fire from the road," she remarked, her pale knuckles clutching the driving wheel. "At first, I assumed it was an accident. Then I noticed you sprinting. I've never seen anything like that." "He wanted to kill me," I said, my hands shaking in my lap. "He was igniting matches and pouring gas. I have no idea why." With her eyes darting to the back, she shook her head. "Mira," she whispered, "some people are just broken. You're fortunate to have escaped." With the truck's engine roaring and the road ahead dark and deserted, we raced toward the closest town. His face, those crazy eyes, that terrible smile, kept coming back to me. I could still feel the heat from the flames and smell the gasoline. I was unable to stop the fire that was destroying my house and everything I owned. The neon sign of a small police station buzzed in the silence as we pulled up. I staggered out, my legs weak, and revealed everything to the police. The matches, the gasoline, the hammering, and the man's jeers. Grim-faced, they listened while taking notes. By the time their patrol arrived at the rest point, Wanderlust had been completely destroyed by the fire. With its windows broken and its tires melted, the RV was reduced to a charcoal shell. They discovered the gas can empty and dented, but the man was nowhere to be seen. They assumed he was a nomad, perhaps an off-grid person who preys for lone passengers at far-off stops. There are no traces, no prints, and no way to locate him. While I was making my statement, the woman who saved me waited. She gave me a piece of paper with her phone number on it before she left. "Call if you need anything," she remarked in a strict yet gentle tone. "You're going to be okay." I didn't feel well, but I nodded. A portion of me seemed to have burned up with the RV, leaving me feeling empty. That night, I lost everything. My clothes, my pictures, my feeling of security. I continued to see his face. I heard his voice in my dreams. "Get out. Wherever you are. Come out." I have no idea why he picked me and why he desired to harm me. Perhaps he didn't require an explanation. I now share what happened with other RVERS. I advise them to keep their phones charged, park in well-lit lots close to other people, and follow their instincts if anything doesn't feel right. I was altered that night. It showed me that, although the road can be lovely, it can also be brutal. Moreover, some threats can be found in tranquil areas where you don't anticipate them. The Bowl 1 guided our RV into the Bowl, a remote area of beach close to Corpus Christi. The ocean's constant buzz permeated the air as dunes rose around us, like frozen waves. Tom, my spouse, and I yearned for a calm weekend. The broad water, the sand, and just us. There was already another RV parked close by, a white rig with a faded blue stripe and a little awning in front. From its window, 2 cats looked out, their eyes catching the last of the light. As we set up, the proprietors, a retired Navy couple named James and Michelle Butler, waved. Their smiles were the kind that made you feel as though you were old friends. First time here, James approached with a thermos of coffee and called. His grey hair was his t-shirt featured a sailboat emblem and was cropped short. Yeah, I replied as I wiped the sand from my hands. Heard this place is peaceful. Michelle came over, carrying a folding chair and swinging her locket. It's our favorite spot, she remarked. No crowds, just you and the sea. As he unloaded our cooler, Tom smiled. Sounds perfect, he replied. As we set up camp, we talked. There are VTOLs travels across the nation that captivate us. They had seen beaches all along the coast, mountains in Montana, and deserts in Arizona. We gathered around a bonfire they had constructed that evening. Sparks flew into the darkness as the flames broke, and the dunes created long shadows that appeared to move on their own. James steadily poured more coffee, while narrating a tale about an Oregon whale watching excursion. Thought the boat would tip, but Michelle just laughed, he remarked, giving her a gentle prod. She grinned and rolled her eyes. She teased, you screamed louder than me. With the mug warm in my hands, I took a drink of my cocoa. You to make it sound so easy. This full-time RV life, I replied. Michelle's locket glinted as she shrugged. It's freedom, she declared. You pick a spot, stay as long as you want, then move on. Tom threw a stick into the flames. We're still figuring it out, he said, but I'm hooked on this place. The beat of the water soothed us as we conversed till the fire went out. See you in the morning, James remarked as they made their way to their RV, which had softly lighting windows. Tom and I climbed into ours, finding solace in the door's familiar creak. The murmur of the waves lulled me to sleep until midnight, when I was startled awake. Sharp, low voices pierced the silence. Not Michelle's gentle voice or James's loud laugh. These were distinct, pressing, like a disagreement that was cut short in the middle of a sentence. My heart pounded. I moved to the window and carefully opened the blinds. In the moonlight, 2 individuals stood close to the butler's RV, their shapes hazy. One was tall, his torch beam dashing across the sand, while he wore a baseball cap pulled low over his face. The other, a ponytail-wearing woman, made a quick gesture and spoke in an inaudible whispered whisper. My stomach gave a nod. Tom, I shook him and whispered. Half sleeping, he moaned. What's wrong? I gestured toward the window. Someone's out there near their RV. He rubbed his eyes, sat up, and looked outside. The beach was peaceful once more and the figures had vanished. He muttered, maybe just late-night walkers, but his voice faltered. After that, I couldn't sleep since I was listening for every sound. When morning arrived, the beach also felt off, still, expecting to see Michelle tossing a ball for their kitties or James lighting up his portable grill. I went outside. However, their RV was silent, its door slightly ajar, and it swayed with a tiny creak. My chest constricted. I yelled, Tom, come look. His brows wrinkled. He joined me. Sand clung to my sneakers as we strolled over. I knocked on the open door and said, James, Michelle. No response. Inside, their food bowls were empty, their cat's litter, and they were meowing loudly. A half-full coffee mug and the folded newspaper were placed on the counter. The locket Michelle had worn the previous evening was no longer on the table. This isn't right, I said. I spoke in a barely audible whisper. Tom's jaw tightened as he looked around the RV. What happened to them? They still have their trucks here, with the keys hanging in the ignition. The truck they hauled was parked next to the RV. Walking, we looked around the beach, yelling their names throughout the length of the dunes. Michelle, James. The vastness drowned out my voice. There were no footsteps leading away, and the sand was unaltered. I felt a chill in my stomach and my discomfort increased. I froze around noon next to a seaweed-tangled pile of driftwood. Those numbers from the previous evening had returned. The woman with the ponytail and the tall man in the baseball cap were standing near a rusted pickup truck that was parked just past the dunes. They were hauling a bulky object covered in a blue tarp, similar to the kind used for camping supplies. They grunted as they pulled it to the truck's bed, since it sagged in the middle. My breath caught. I said, "Tom, look," and drew him in. Behind a dune. His face was devoid of color as he squinted. His voice was low as he asked, "What's in that tarp?" The woman narrowed her eyes as she looked at us, and I crouched down, my pulse racing so difficult I assumed it would explode. After the man slammed the tailgate shut, they got inside the vehicle and drove off, the tires spraying sand. I was unable to remain motionless back at our RV. I told Tom, my hands trembling as I poured water, "We have to do something." I abstained from alcohol. "It's wrong, those folks, that tarp." He nodded and reached for his phone. He said, "I'm calling the ranger." He explained over the phone in a steady voice, "James and Michelle Butler, our neighbors, are no longer with us. We noticed some folks acting strangely. Their VS were open, and their kitties were by themselves." Hours passed with no sign of assistance, despite the ranger's vow to send someone. I couldn't stop staring at the Butler's RV, its open door hurting. The sound of their cats' howls filled the silence, each one tightening the knot in my stomach. I was unable to close my eyes that evening. I jumped at every stream in our RV and every rustle outside. I retained that the shades were closed, but I swear I heard slow, methodical footsteps crunching in the sand. "Tom, you hear that?" I muttered. After listening, he shook his head. "Just the wind," he claimed, yet he didn't seem persuaded. I gripped the blanket tightly, picturing those people outside as their flashlights moved in closer. 2 days later, the beach is crowded with ranger trucks and police cars, their lights flashing against the sand dunes, and with a sad expression on his face. The ranger knocked on the door of our RV. "We found 2 bodies buried in the sand about a mile from here," stated the man. "It's James and Michelle Butler." Tom caught me when my knees failed, his hands shaking. "Buried." I gasped for air. The ranger gave a nod. "It appears to be murder. We located their stolen RV in Mexico. The suspects driving it were apprehended." My thoughts glanced to the towering man and the ponytail-wearing woman holding the sagging tarp. My throat burned and I felt sick. That afternoon, we hurriedly packed up. I noticed something shimmering in the sand close to us as I folded our chairs. It was Michelle's locket, half buried with seaweed tangling its silver chain. With trembling fingers, I lifted it up and opened it. A small picture of Michelle and James on their wedding day gazed back, their smiles captured in a moment in time. My eyes burned with tears. With a broken voice, I gave it to the police and told them where I had found it. Since then, we haven't gone camping. The bowl was meant to be our haven, a place where we could breathe easy. Rather, it's an unshakable nightmare. In my nightmares, I see those people, the shadows extending over the sand dunes, sharp and desperate. I hear the cats cry. I remember Michelle's locket, James's giggle, and how quickly everything disappeared. Now, when Tom and I travel, we only go to busy parks and stay near to home. The broad road doesn't no longer feel liberated. It seems like a trap dot in the dark, waiting for strangers to transform paradise into a terrifying place.